So this is a new gadget I got for Christmas from my parents. Really only got one present because it was this, but it's a really good present. And I decided to try to be a high-tech preacher this year and preach off of it. So we'll see how that goes. If it breaks halfway through, I'll just have to make the rest up. But I love Christmas. I always have. I love the songs, the lights, and the warm feelings of my family. I love the secular aspects of Christmas just as much as the religious ones. I love baking cookies and going to see the ice and the lights in the houses with my mom. I love having my own nativity up in my apartment. I have a new German one this year. As well as some mistletoe that I knit for myself, because, you know, always good to have some hand-knit mistletoe. And I love Christmas Eve services. I usually try to go to more than one. Fortunately, this year I couldn't. I love the music, the candles, hearing the story of the birth of Jesus and singing Silent Night with all the people I love. This Christmas, I come down with a cold. Fortunately, I did that on Christmas Eve, so I couldn't sing. I sang Silent Night, but I sounded awful. But I could stand and listen to the music and the singing, let it all wash around me. Throughout this whole season, I've been enjoying all the things I love about Christmas and all the things I love about Advent. But I've also been thinking about this horrible story. Early in December, Nick asked me if I'd like to preach today. I said, sure. Then I looked at the lectionary text. Said something a lot less becoming than sure. And the lectionary text, this story, it got stuck in my head. For a month, I've been thinking about this story. For a month of finals and vacation and family, I've been thinking about this horrifying story. What is there to say to a congregation about this horrifying story? What is there to say about the fact that this story is placed right next to the story of the birth of Jesus? What is there to say when we read this particular word of the Lord and reply, "Praise be to Christ"? Well, I love Christmas, and I can honestly say I've never had anything but a wonderful one. I know there are people in the world whose experience is absolutely different than mine. That's who this story is for. Today we read several passages about how much God loves and cares for God's children. Isaiah told us about how God's presence is what will save his children, out of love and mercy. Psalms tell us that young men and women are to both praise God for the great things God has done. Finally, Hebrews tell us that Jesus became like his brothers and sisters, out of love, in order to save us. So here we are, full of promises of salvation and love for all God's children. And we encounter one of the most horrific stories of the Bible, Herod choosing, out of fear and anger, to kill hundreds of innocent children. How are we supposed to reconcile these vastly different stories in our Bible, especially when we read them all at once? How can we say that God loves his children and then read about how so many were slaughtered out of fear of what God's Son might be? This is the Christmas story that brings us back to real life. Because sometimes life isn't a perfect Christmas with a happy, loving, and unbroken family. Sometimes the worst parts of life get in the way of our happy Christmas story. And this is what happened the first Christmas too. Joseph and Mary are just beginning their lives together, poor but with their son. And then they are told to flee and stay hidden because of the workings of powerful men that wish only evil towards their child. And that evil was not stopped by their flight, but simply carried out in spite of it. And there was wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. This is a part of our first Christmas story, and in some way it has been a part of every Christmas story ever since. The world is always broken. We are always broken. Sometimes more obviously than others. Sometimes it hurts more than others. But Jesus did not come into a perfect world. Jesus did not come and immediately make the world perfect. Jesus came into broken and fragile flesh, just like us, and then evil continued to make its way through this world. And Jesus did not shy away from this evil either. He was not killed by this particular attempt, but he would continue to teach and to confront evil for the rest of his short life until he was made and to suffer and die in an incredibly painful way. Another child killed in front of his mother. All out of love for humans and God's creation. Jesus did this all out of a love to plan to save us from our brokenness. So this part of the Christmas story is especially for those who aren't able to feel all the wonderful, happy Christmas feelings this year. Those who are hurting because they're losing parents. Those who are hurting because their bodies are hurting them. Those who are hurting because of broken relationships. Those who are simply depressed this year and trying to muddle through. And this is the story for those who have lost children. Jesus came into the world and into the midst of one of the worst tragedies a person could face. Jesus did not come to put a Band-Aid over it and make it all better right away. But he did come. Jesus is Emmanuel, and we have that promise to hold on to. On Christmas Eve, in the midst of the beautiful music and the feelings of love and community and friendship, Nick told us all a little about hope. This Christmas story is all about hope, too. Hope that even though there is weeping now, Jesus is with us and in the midst of it. That God feels our sorrows and our brokenness and our pain, and God hurts with us. That we do not have a distant God willing to let us run our lives into the ground, but instead who chose to lower himself and to go through it all with us in order to save us from what we cannot save ourselves from. When we are hurting now, at Christmas or at any other time, God is there, right next to us, feeling every pain with us. And God gives us a new kind of hope. A hope that this isn't the end. A hope that when we say goodbye to our parents, to our children, to our loved ones now, that we are not saying goodbye forever. That eternal peace is more than just an end of suffering, but also a beginning of something so big and so wonderful that we can't even comprehend it now. We just have to hope, and God is there to remind us every day that we do not hope in vain. God knows that hope does not mean that grief goes away, but that hope gives us something more than grief to hold on to. So yes, praise be to Christ for this story. Praise and thanksgiving that God chose to love us so much that in the midst of a world this broken and full of evil, he would come, take on our own lives and our bodies, and live with us. That God would spend some time with us so that we can meet God and understand the abiding presence that we still have through pain and sorrow and through joy and peace. That God is always with us. That God is Emmanuel. Amen.